Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to make some sketchbooks and I thought I may as well film the process. This is going to be super simple, probably not going to be anything you've not seen before, but hopefully it will still be inspiring in some way, maybe helpful in some way. I have some old books that I'm going to turn into sketchbooks. I've got a couple of covers. So this is a cover that I got this book at an op shop, I'm pretty sure, or maybe the tip shop. And I've already taken pages out and I've already reinforced the spine. So this one's pretty much ready just to be bound. Then I have another really beautiful cover and I bought it gutted as well. So it came without the pages inside. It's in pretty good shape. I don't know if it will need too much reinforcement, but I think this will make such a pretty little sketchbook. It's got just the most beautiful floral cover. So I've got that one. And then I've also got a couple of old books that I've had for ages. So I've got these two Reader's Digest books. So they're a nice little size as well. And then the last book I've got is this version of Heidi. It's pretty marked up. It's a nice little book. I really like the cover and I think it would make a really nice little sketchbook. I like this little embossed floral on the cover. And I also like that we share a first name. So I thought maybe I could do something creative, maybe cover up the rest of the text on the spine and just have my name left. I'm not sure, but I think this is a really nice little size for a sketchbook. So I've got this one as well. I definitely do not need 5 sketchbooks right now, but I do have some covers ready to go, so I may as well make these 2 up. But any old book will work for this. If you have any old book covers that you really love, or you can go out and find one, they're pretty easy to find. It's also usually pretty easy to go out and find books that are in desperate need of a second life or to be saved from the tip. So you can always go out and find a pretty book to give a new life to. So in this video, I'm just going to demonstrate with one of these. I think I'll demonstrate with this beautiful cover. So the first step is to obviously remove the pages on the inside. This cover, it's already been done for me, but if you wanted to do this, it's really, really easy. It's the easiest with a book that has this gap where the text block is added. So there's a gap in between the spine and the text block. That way, all you have to do is take a blade and just kind of cut down each side. So there, and then one at the back. And you're basically cutting through one layer of paper. So it's really easy to do, and then that whole text block should come out in one nice clean piece. Once you're done that, you'll be left with something like this. I think I'm going to remove this page here just to make it a little bit easier to reinforce the spine. Some beautiful handwriting in the back of this book. So then I'm also just going to pick off this paper that's kind of flaking away, just any bits that are flaking off, just because it's not really doing anything for us. If it's already kind of falling apart, we need to remove some of that. So you'll have a book cover that looks something like this, nice and bare and ready to turn into a lovely little sketchbook. So the next step is just to reinforce the spine. So I already did that with this cover here, and I just used a piece of scrap fabric and I glued it across the spine and then a little bit over the front and back cover, just to give it that little bit of extra strength. So this particularly gives us some strength in the folds here where our cover's always being folded. So we're going to do the same thing on this book. I'm just going to grab a little piece of fabric and I'm just going to cut it a little bit longer than the height of the book at first. Just a easier piece to work with. And then I'm going to cut this down so that it is big enough to reach across the spine, over the folds, and then onto the cover, just a little bit, because that's going to give us that strength in the folds of the book. Now I'm just going to glue this little strip of fabric on. So I'm going to use some PVA glue. I'm using acid-free PVA glue. It's a water-based adhesive. I'm going to use that with a glue brush and I'm just going to attach this piece of fabric across the spine. So I've just got some glue here. It's white and it dries on clear. I'm just going to put this across the spine area first, all the way up to the edge of the cover. And then I'm going to extend that glue just over the fold here. onto the front and back cover. I'm just going to start off with a little strip of glue, and then I'll put my fabric down. And if I need to add any more, I can do that, but I don't want to put way too much. My cat is here purring very loudly once again, so I'm not sure if you can hear that, but I'm just going to take the fabric and I'm going to start off by pressing it in the spine area first. And it's really handy if you have a bone folder. You can just use that to help glue this down. Make sure you get into all the little cracks and crevices. So the folds of the book, just smooth it all down. And then I'm going to smooth down the bit across the cover as well. Now, I'm just going to carefully, before this is even dried, I'm going to just carefully cut off the excess. You can wait until it's dried to do this, but I'm just going to cut off that excess fabric. Then you just want to leave that to dry completely before we move on to the next step. And depending on how well this is sticking, if you feel like it's not sticking too well, you can also always put a little bit more wet glue over the top of the fabric. So it will kind of seep into the fabric and help glue it down. So I'm going to add a little bit of extra glue. It will go through the pores of the fabric and then it will dry, and it might just be that little bit stronger. So I'm just going to apply a little bit more glue. So now that this is completely dry, you can probably feel a bit of a difference in the strength of your book and of your spine. So this is just going to be a lot stronger now when I bind my papers in and when I'm opening and closing this book a lot to use it as a sketchbook. So this is completely dry. I actually left it to dry overnight because I ended up putting quite a bit of glue over the top and I didn't want any stickiness when I'm binding my book. So just let it dry completely, and now we need to gather up our papers to put inside. So for a sketchbook, you're probably just going to want some plain white or off-white paper, just some standard paper. I've got a couple of different paper pads here that I actually got at Kmart. So I got 2 of these, and I got this, it's actually cardstock, it's 180 GSM. And then I also have just pulled out a couple of old traveler's notebooks that I have not used or I've used very lightly. So if I wanted to, I could sort of repurpose the papers from these books into a sketchbook. This one's got this brown paper, and then this one also has white paper. So they're all different weights of paper. They're all a little bit different. For me, I don't mind having a mixture of paper types in my sketchbook. I actually think it makes the process of using the sketchbook a little bit more relaxed when all the papers are different and when they're not super high quality. So of course you can use paper that's much better quality than what I've got here. I feel like I'm a bit rusty with my art practice, and I also feel a little bit intimidated by those higher quality papers and supplies. So I'm just going to use this really basic paper. For me in my book, the spine measures about 1.5 inches, and I think I can comfortably fit probably 4 or 5 signatures in here. So signatures refer to a group of pages that we're going to individually sew into the book. And I like to typically keep my signatures to about 5 pages per signature. Sometimes a little bit more, it just depends on the type of paper you're using and the thickness of paper. So this paper pad is 160 GSM. So I'm just going to start by pulling out enough papers for my sketchbook. I'm just tearing them straight off the pad. So I'm going to go for about 25 sheets of paper. So I've pulled off 10 sheets of the sketch paper, the artist pad paper, so 10 of those. And then I actually think I might pull some pages from these books. It might be nice to have some brown paper in here. So I'm actually going to remove the thread here so I can repurpose this paper. And the reason why I haven't used this little booklet yet is because I kind of went off Traveler's Notebook. I was using them for a while and I never got to using all of the notebooks that I had. So I think I might use 5 of these. Then I've also gone ahead and pulled out the stitches out of this little notebook as well. I'm going to also take 5 sheets from this book. So I've got 5 of this white paper, 5 of these craft colored sheets. Then I've got 10 of the sketch pad, and then I will take 5 of this cardstock. So that gives me a bit of variety of papers in my sketchbook. Again, if you don't like that, you can have all the same type of pages. So it's completely up to you what papers you want to include. Now the next step is just to fold all the sheets of paper in half. So these books are super quick to make. There's not a lot of extra to do because we're just including plain paper. All of these pages that I've taken out of the notebooks are already folded for me, so that makes it even quicker. Same with those ones. And then for these sheets, I just need to go ahead and fold them all in half as well. Now, the next thing we need to do before we can bind it together is make sure that our pages are going to fit inside the cover. And I have a very simple way of doing this, just nice and easy. I just take the paper, I pop it in the cover, and I look and I see if it fits. It doesn't. It's a little bit, just very, very little bit too tall and a little bit too wide. So then I would take my ruler and I'm going to just tear these down. I really like the torn look, but if it's a little bit too ragged for you, you can always just clean it up a little bit with a pair of scissors, or you could always cut these with a paper trimmer. So I'm going to also tear it this way to make sure it's going to fit inside the cover. And then I just check to see if it fits, and it does. So then I would repeat the process for the rest of the papers. So obviously I'm using different types of papers, so I have to tear off a slightly different amount for each type of paper. So this one, this sketch paper, it's quite a bit too wide, so I would need to tear off that little bit more for this particular type of paper. And then I just check to see if it fits. Again, it fits just fine. So that's all I do, just to tear my papers down to be the right size. I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of the sheets here, and then we'll come back and move on to the next step. So now I have torn down all of the papers that I'm going to put into my little sketchbook. I'm going to assemble the signatures. So because I have different papers, I'm going to just put them into their little stacks of paper types so I can disperse those paper types through the signatures. So I've got my brown paper, my sketch paper, which I have the most of. So I've got 5 sheets of each of these, and then I've got 10 of these. So to create my signatures, I'm going to stick to 5 sheets per signature. I'm going to start off with the one that I have the most of. I might do 2 of those. So to assemble the signature, we're just stacking the pages with the folds together, and I'm doing stacks of 5. So 3, 4, and 5, and that would be one of our signatures for our first signature. So a little group of pages. I'm just going to go ahead and do that with the rest of the paper. So now I have 5 little groups of pages. There's 5 pages in each group. So now we can stitch these into our book. I'm just going to check that everything is sitting pretty nicely. I don't mind a little bit of overhang, but I don't want too much. So I'm just going to check, make sure that most of the pages are sitting pretty nicely inside the cover, which they are. Again, there's a couple of sheets that hang out a little bit more, but I don't really mind that look, and I can always cut them or tear them down later if it's bothering me. But I kind of like being able to see some of those torn edges. So this is kind of what it's going to look like once it's stitched in. So then we're going to take our little groups of pages and some little paper clips, and I'm just going to clip the pages together to keep them in their groups and keep the folds nice and flush together. So just going to use that one big clip, and then for some of these smaller clips, sometimes I put 2, so I'll put 1 on each side, or I'll put 1 up the top and 1 down the bottom, just to make sure it's held together nice and firmly. So now they are all held together, we are going to sew them into our cover, and then we'll be finished. So again, really, really simple process. And I have a more thorough binding tutorial, which I'll link down below in case you would like to see that. But we're going to keep this pretty simple. So we've got 5 groups of pages, and they are going to be sewn in like this into the spine. So they're going to be side by side each other, and each group will have their own individual stitch. So What I like to do is take a little bit of paper and we're going to make a quick little template. So I like to take my piece of paper and I'm going to mark out how tall the book is and also how wide the spine is. So you can measure this out. We know my spine's 1.5 inches, but I'm just going to use my eyes and mark it off. And then we're going to cut this out so that we have a little piece that's the same size as our spine. And now I'm going to mark out the template for the stitches. So I'm going to do my simple stitch that I always do. It's a 3-hole stitch. So I'm going to find the middle of the template by folding the piece of paper in half. And just going to mark that off. And then I am going to measure, I think I'll do about 2.5 inches either side of that line. So this is marking out where our stitches are going to sit in our book. And again, I have a more thorough tutorial if you would like things to be explained a little bit better. But now I'm just going to actually just bring that line across the entire way with my pencil. And I'm also going to mark the top of the template just so I know to keep it the right way up the entire time we're using the template. So I have 5 signatures. So I'm going to have 5 individual stitches, and what I do is I just draw 5 little dots across the middle line, and I do this slightly first so that I can redo it if it's wrong, but I usually start in the middle. So that's my first set. Then I need to fit 4 more, so then I do 1 on either side and then our last 2. And that gives us 5 little dots on the template. You can measure this out to be exact and precise if you like, but I'm not going to be doing that for these books. So then all I'm going to do is actually just take my ruler and I'm going to draw a line with my pencil all the way down the template. And this is going to show me on these other 2 lines where the dots should sit so that they are in line with each other. Again, I do have another tutorial specifically for binding, so if you find that this is a little bit confusing, I've explained everything in a little bit more detail in that video, so you can always go and check that out afterwards if you're a bit worried about the binding process. But there we have our lines. Then I like to take a pen so that it's really easy to see, and I am just doing a dot where those lines cross over each other. And mine is not going to be perfect because I've not measured this out perfectly. I'm just doing a very quick sketchbook, a very simple process. I can see that this one's a little bit more spaced out just with my eyes. So these lines here are pretty much how your stitches are going to look relative to each other. So if they look terrible, you might want to redo your template. Mine aren't perfect, but I don't think they look terrible. So I'm going to go ahead and use this as my template. So now what I like to do is I put my template on the spine, make sure it's fitting in there nice and straight, and then I take some clips. I put a paper clip along the bottom and I put a paper clip along the top. This is going to just hold our template in the same place and keep it nice and neat and keep it the same while we poke those holes. So you're going to need an awl, which is a very sharp little stick like this. This one's from Spotlight. You can find it in the sewing section. This one's from eBay, but they're just very, very sharp little sticks. And we are going to poke these holes through. So we're going to poke straight through our template and straight through our cover. So everywhere those dots are, we are going to poke a hole through. So you go ahead and poke those all through, and the fabric that we use to reinforce our spine area is going to also give it a lot more strength. So if you're using a book that's old and a little bit brittle, it will give this area a lot more strength to hold the stitches and to hold the pages, the weight of the pages. So reinforcing the book's pretty important. It's a very important step. Now I've poked all of those holes through, I can take these clips off and I can also take the template away. So I don't know if you can see very well, but we've got our 3 sets of holes on the spine ready to go. And now we're going to use that template to also line our pages up. So remember, we marked where the top was. We're going to take our first group of pages, we're going to open it up to the middle, place our template on the middle, And then we use these lines as a guide for where our holes need to be. So we're going to take the little pokey stick, we're going to poke through the group of pages. If you've watched my channel before, you've probably seen me do this process a million times. So repeat this step for all of your groups of pages. And this is, again, just making everything nice and easy and simple. So we're kind of doing all the hard work ahead of time. Once you have all of the holes poked through your cover and through your pages, it's just a matter of threading your binding thread through those holes and tying it off, so it's really quick and easy from there. So now we are ready to stitch the pages in, and then we'll be finished. So you need some thread to stitch this. You can really use any type of string or thread, but it's better to use something strong. So I like to use a waxed linen thread. You can also use like a hemp cord or an embroidery floss or something like that. I've got a couple of different colors here, so I'm going to pick a color that I think looks nice with the cover. So I picked this color. I think this is a really nice color, and I think it complements the cover as well. So we're going to need some thread, and we're also going to need a needle. This is the needle that I'm using. You need one that's a little bit bigger and thicker than a regular little sewing needle. It needs to have probably a bit of a bigger eye to fit your thread through, and something that a little bit bigger and stronger is a lot easier to use. So I'm going to trim off a little length of thread. I'm going to put it through my little needle, just enough that it's not going to come out. And then we're going to take our first signature and we're going to go through the first hole. I feel like a broken record doing this tutorial because I have shared this binding method so many times, but it's just old trusty. So we go through the middle hole in the signature and then through the middle hole in our book cover, the first middle hole. Pull it through, leave a tail, and then go back through the bottom hole or the top hole, it doesn't make a difference. So back through the cover and through the pages and pull it through. Again, make sure you don't pull your tail out. Then I like to go back through the middle hole again, pulling it tight to each stitch, and then back through the last hole. So through the cover and through the group of pages, and then pull that through, take the needle off, and then tie this off in a knot. So I'm just going to do a little double knot here, and my knot is sitting right in the middle there. So double or a triple knot should do the trick. And then you can just trim off any excess string that you've got there. And then your pages are bound in. You can take off your clips. And then repeat the process with the rest of the signatures. So again, going to get another length of thread. I'm going to put it through the eye of the needle, go through the middle hole, and then back in the same way that we did before. So back in, back out, and then back in through the last hole. And tie it off once again. And then I'm going to repeat the process with the last 3 signatures that my book has. So it doesn't matter if your book has more signatures or less signatures, the stitching method's still the same. And I'll sew in the last signatures, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. So here is the finished little sketchbook. That's my stitching. It's not perfect, but I think it looks really pretty. The book cover itself is gorgeous, so it didn't need any work done to it. It was already beautiful. And now we have a little book that we can use. So it's filled up with some different sorts of papers that I can play around with. I've just been feeling so inspired to do more traditional art, painting, sketching, drawing, and I love this little size. I can easily take this in my bag. So a really quick, simple way to make little books, make little sketchbooks, and you can explore with different types of papers. So you can try different paper types, and you can also explore with different sizes. So this is a really nice, slim, small little size for your hand, but you can obviously repurpose books in any size. So longer ones, taller ones, and that obviously gives you a different size canvas to play around with as well when you're creating art. So if you like making bigger art, which I typically do, this is kind of a bit of a challenge for me. But if you like making bigger art, you can just repurpose a slightly bigger book. So I hope you enjoy this quick little tutorial or inspiration video if you already know how to bind books. I'm really looking forward to playing around in this pretty little book. Another thing you can also do to finish this off is add a closure of some type. So you could put some eyelets on the cover and thread some sort of ribbon around it to keep it closed, or you could have like an elastic band or something like that. But I'm just going to leave mine nice and simple for now. I think it looks so pretty, and taking away the drying time for the spine reinforcement, you can make something like this in like an hour. So it's a really quick little project to put together. A nice little gift. I'm really happy with it. I hope you enjoyed seeing me make it. And yeah, I will see you soon in my next video. Bye.